Hey, San Diego. Welcome to our podcast. This is another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego, with video production provided by MaxLex Media at KCBQ with your host, Steve Wire. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you informed and engaged with the latest political events and trending news in the San Diego area. Join us on a weekly exploration as we sit down with prominent community members, political figures, insightful analysts, business leaders, and more. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and enjoy the show. All right, well, today we have on returning guest Bill Wells. Bill is the mayor of El Cajon, and he's also running for Congress in the 51st District. Thanks again for coming onto the show. Really appreciate having you.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So, as I just said, Bill was elected to the El Cajon City Council, and he's now mayor, but he was first elected in 2008, was elected again in 2012, and served as pro tem during 2009, 2013, and then became mayor in 2013 and was appointed to serve the rest of his term, and then was elected again in 2014. Is that right? And
yes.
Served since then.
Right.
So another thing that I wanted to point out is that you actually grew up in the district you're running for.
Yes.
Yeah, 51st District. And
what a novel concept.
Yeah, I know, right? But we've had situations in the past few years where it turns out people aren't necessarily from the districts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, which I think is a mistake. I think the law is wrong on that one.
Yeah. So you started working from a young age, right? Age 11 is what?
Yeah, I got a job delivering papers for the Union Tribune at age 11, and I did that until I moved up the ladder to Jack in the Box at 16. Okay. And I've pretty much been working ever since.
And you love your job. You love what you do. I want to talk a little bit about this because your sort of motivations for seeking public office and stuff is something we're going to get to in a bit, but sort of just how that transition happened. How did you go from, working your butt off as a younger kid to sort of getting involved into politics? Well,
that never really ended. Being the mayor of a city is, except for the mayor of San Diego, I think Chula Vista, it's all part-time jobs for us.
Yeah.
So, I make enough money from my job to pay my car payments. So I have to have a job. So I got my doctorate in psychology long ago, and have been working in mental health since 1988. And I own a healthcare company now, so I'm still very active.
What company, if you don't ask?
It's Fidare Healthcare.
Okay.
Fidare means trust in Italian.
Italian. Okay, I thought it was Italian. So basically, yeah, we'll get into a little bit more about the sort of the transitional period, because that is something I want to talk about.
Sure.
And focus on is not just that you're running for public office, but sort of how this came about. How it happened, how you got into public service.
I think it's super important that people, if they're going to vote for somebody or they're going to be the leader, that they have a sense of who you are as an individual. Because I think in public office you can be so one-dimensional. And people think of you as this one kind of person that doesn't do anything else. I'm a musician. I play sports.
Play guitar, right?
I do play guitar. I play piano mostly. Piano, guitar, and saxophone.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up playing the violin, but haven't played in years. But you still play, right? From what I hear, you still love music. You still love performing. Is that right?
Yeah, we just did a big benefit concert about 2 weeks ago at the Magnolia Theater.
What was the benefit for?
For the East County Transitional Living Center, a homeless shelter.
Okay. All right.
We raised about $100,000. So
that's amazing. That's a lot of money. I mean,
it's over the years has grown to be a fairly big concert. We had about 1,200 people show up and had sponsors, and so it gets bigger and bigger every year.
Sure. Is that something you're going to do more of too, like benefit concerts, performances like that?
As much as I can. It's a 14-piece band, so we had a full horn section and everything. So it's kind of like putting on a wedding every time you do these. You got to get everybody in the same place at the same time. But
it's awesome. Well, in that vein, I wanted to move to some of the issues that we're going to cover today.
Okay.
And by the way, for people who aren't necessarily familiar, District 51 is, it's basically central and eastern portions of San Diego, and then it's also includes some of the suburbs like El Cajon, La Mesa, Spring Valley, Lemon Grove.
Right, and then it goes through Mission Valley all the way up to Mira Mesa.
And it was formerly known as District 53, right? Like before the redistricting happened. What was that, 2022 or?
Yeah.
2021. I can't remember. Yeah. So, but the first big issue I want to talk about is something you've been particularly outspoken on in the news recently, and that's the issue of immigration.
Yeah.
And in particular, recently, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law, I believe in the last couple of weeks, correct? That essentially outlines like low income Mexicans who travel across the border. It allows them to essentially enroll at community colleges in Southern California at in-state tuition rates, which are extremely low compared to the out-of-state rates. It's a pilot program. It's supposed to go until 2029, I think. So you came out in opposition to this, and I'm going to read a quote from an article that you actually, I think it was an op-ed that you actually released recently. Correct me if this is incorrect, but what you said in this op-ed was that virtue signaling like this law, is only so much more ridiculous by how incredibly difficult the real problems are in our region. American students across the nation are grappling with exorbitant college debt burdens. Allowing Mexican students to pay reduced in-state tuition is a disservice to the millions of American students facing this financial challenge. This is emblematic of a growing pattern in our country, our county, state, and country, where the needs of U.S. citizens are being disregarded. So talk to me a little bit about why you oppose this law, why you feel so strongly about this, and why you decided to speak publicly about it.
Well, I think at the root of it, it's a basic fairness issue. I mean, we need to take care of the people that are living in America, that are American citizens. You know, I pay taxes, you pay taxes, your parents pay taxes, my parents pay taxes. And for those reasons, there were things like in-state tuition, so people like us could go to, I could never have gone to college if I hadn't gotten when I went to San Diego State. You know, how much did it cost to go to San Diego State when I went?
Per year?
Per semester.
Per semester. Back in the day, I'll go ahead and say $500.
$112 a semester for all the classes you could take. But even then—
Was it the 70s?
Or the 80s.
80s, okay.
Even then, it was, it's so hard to pay that. If I hadn't gotten that low rate of college, I couldn't have gone. And on the other side, people will say, well, isn't it fair that poor people in Mexico should have the same opportunities? And I can understand at a base level why you would understand that. But, let's give a analogy. If you were my son and you said, Dad, I've been accepted to USC and I'd like to go to USC. And I'd say, gosh, son, I'm so proud of you. I'd like to send you. But unfortunately, the neighbors' kids need to go to college too. I gotta take care of them. And then there's some people down the street. Hey, boy, we don't know them, but it seems really unfair that you're going to go to USC and they've got to go to community college. So we've got to spread that around. And so you can't go. And I think at some level, that really is what's happening. California can't do everything for everybody. California has I think, $40 billion deficit right now. California can't pay its bills. California can't provide the basic services that it should be providing for people. And at the same time, it's raising taxes to an exorbitant level. We already pay the highest taxes in the nation, not to mention the gas taxes and the fact that our electricity is the highest in the nation. And our rents, I mean, I don't know if you've seen how much rents cost these days, but—
Well, I pay it.
Yeah. So the apartment that I used to rent for $500 a month now costs you guys $4,000 a month. And I don't think that's commensurate with the amount of inflation either. It's gone significantly higher. And a lot of this has to do with the policies of the current people that are in charge of California government.
Sure.
So, long-winded answer, I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And if we are going to give somebody a break, what about the people who live in Nevada and Utah and Kansas? Doesn't it make more sense to give them a break rather than give people from another country a break? Because that other country also has resources. And if they want to take care of their people, then they should do that. And if people don't like the fact that their government's not providing them enough, then they can vote that government out and get the government they want.
Sure. So just a couple quick numbers to float by you. So the current average California community college tuition per year is, I looked it up today, $1,246 for in-state students. That's compared to over $6,500 for those from out of state. So it's quite a big difference. So it's quite a huge break. But it's a very limited number. I'll point out that from what I gathered from the research I did, it's a very limited number of people who actually qualify for this program. I believe it's mostly students who live near the border. It's not like throughout California. It's mostly students who live near the border, and it's a relatively I think it's set up to, it says up to 150 students at each of the 8 partner colleges in the program will be able to participate. So, I mean, it's not an exorbitant necessarily cost to the state, but it seems as though you oppose this more on the basis of the principle of the thing rather than the actual cost metrics itself.
Yeah, on a morality basis and a principle basis. I mean, I think it's immoral to take people's money and to redistribute that wealth to everybody. Now,
well, isn't that what taxes are, though? I mean,
to some degree, yes. But, I think most people feel that we have a basic contract with government that we're going to let them tax us, and they're going to provide us safety, they're going to provide an infrastructure, they're going to provide the basic things that we need for life. And then the breakdown between liberals and conservatives comes in how far that goes. And, I'm more of a limited government viewpoint that government should provide those basic services and then stay out of the way and let people live the lives they want to live and achieve what they can achieve without confiscating their wealth and redistributing it so that everybody is at the same level. It goes to an absurd degree when then you start looking for oppressed classes and people that might need help that are even outside of our purview, outside of our jurisdiction. It was, if we're going to go to Mexico, why not go to Bangladesh? Why not go to China? Why not go to the entire world and say, look, we're going to subsidize education for everybody because that's who we are. That's a nice concept, and I think I can understand why people would really think that's great. But I think anybody who's had to get a paycheck and make a budget and pay their own bills realizes at some point you got to take care of yourself and your own.
Sure. And to follow up on that, so I think from what I read, like the counter argument that sort of people who support the law are making is that, these people are coming across the border anyways. Why not sort of prepare them with, the education they need to actually find serviceable jobs, jobs that, will contribute to our economy, contribute to our society, as opposed to, not preventing them from having access to an education. So I think the argument being made by Democrats who support this is essentially this law helps people, prepares them for the kinds of jobs they need to actually succeed in this country and be, contributing members, contributing taxpayers. How would you sort of push back against that, sort of argument?
Well, again, I think Mexico has a responsibility to provide for their own citizens.
Okay.
But the other part of that is that this is the assumption that there's room for everybody and that there's no harm done to American citizens by bringing people into this process.
And you believe there is?
Well, there's harm in a couple of reasons. One thing is that you as an individual, but the person that can afford college and that was going to pay for their college, that cost now goes up because it's not free. It's not a zero-sum game. If we're going to let people in, they're not going to pay, then we have to, as collectively, have to pay for that person, which then means fees go up. Invariably, a fee is going to go up for the person who's just trying to go to college and is paying taxes and has generationally paid taxes, and so has that earned spot. But the other part is, I was watching a CBS show, and they were talking about how great it was that this girl got into nursing school in America, and she was going to be able to afford it now. And that does sound on its face like a really nice story. But what about the girl in San Diego who's been trying to get into nursing school, but for a variety of reasons hasn't been able to get a spot in this impacted program? And I talk about nursing. I've taught psychology and psychiatry to nursing students before, and I know how hard it is to get into a nursing program. So, there's a reason why you have in-state tuition, and that one of those reasons is to give a competitive edge to the people that live in your state. For example, in Texas, they have 10 medical schools, and they only accept Texas residents. And they do that because they want to give Texas people a chance to go to medical school.
Sure. Now, I do want to point out one thing, which is that the people who will be able to take advantage of the pilot program, the immigrants who will be able to take advantage of this, it's not free, right? Though it is it's very low cost, but it's not free.
In-state tuition.
Yeah, it's in-state tuition. So, I mean, do you sort of see education and sort of the economics of education as sort of a zero-sum game where, we can only benefit so many people. We can't both benefit those coming into the country who are seeking education, seeking jobs, while also benefiting our own citizens. Is that kind of the
Well,
framework that you would.
I think that's the heart of my philosophy in general when it comes to immigration. I think besides the safety aspect of immigration, I think that when you're bringing in 8 million people since the Biden administration took over that are mostly unvetted and oftentimes will be relying on the welfare system of America, for Americans that are already having difficulty paying their bills and getting through life, I think making it harder on American citizens for the benefit of people that are not American citizens, it's a bad policy.
Did undocumented immigration go up during the Biden administration as compared to previous administrations?
Well, the problem is they changed the rules and they changed. So the definitions are different than it used to be. The Biden administration will say that undocumented immigration or people that snuck across the border went down. And
is that true?
Technically, I believe it is true. But the reality is that they made it so easy to get into the country. Right now, if you're coming up from Venezuela or some other place, people will contact you before you get close to the border and say, you need to download this app and fill out this app so that once
the app?
I forgot what the name of it. It's an immigration app.
Can we check that?
Yeah.
Good.
And once you get to the border, all you have to do is sign a couple of forms, and you're going to be given a court date, usually 4 or 5 years into the future, and you're free. You're free to live and work in America. And so I think the number that should be looked at is the actual number of human bodies that have crossed the border, and that has gone up exponentially. Okay. So
now
seeing over 2 million people a year coming in.
2 million. I didn't know that. And do you happen to know how many? I'm just curious how many of those percentage roughly are from Mexico or Central South American countries?
I don't know those percentages specifically, but I can tell you anecdotally that the numbers of people that are coming in are not just from Central America and Mexican people who speak Spanish.
Yeah.
A huge number of people coming in from Africa, from various countries in Africa, from the Middle East, and from China. 27,000 people this year from China.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
A way to kind of put this in perspective is I was talking to somebody who runs an immigration think tank. And he said, there's a place in Venezuela called the Darien Pass. And the Darien Pass is kind of a bottleneck where people that are coming up from Central America have to go through this Darien Pass in Venezuela before they come into America. So we've always kept a close eye on that because it's an indicator of how many people are going to be trying to get into America either legally or illegally. We can talk later about the legality part of it because there's a point I want to make about that. But normally, in a normal year, you see about 10,000 people come through the Darien Pass in a year. So, 800, 900 people a month coming through. Last month, they saw 85,000 people come through the Darien Pass. And they're
Last month?
Last month.
Compared to a normal like 800 or 900?
Yeah.
That's insane.
And this month, they're expecting 200,000. So the floodgates have been open. People realize you can get into America now without being questioned. You can come up and say that you're an asylum seeker because you're being persecuted in their country and no questions are going to be asked. You can bring a child up and they're no longer going to ask for DNA testing. There's a lot of problems at the border.
Yeah. Danielle, did we ever get an answer on the app that...
There's like a couple. There's Immigration Nation.
Immigration Nation. That's not the one.
No, I can get that.
We'll keep looking. Yeah. But another thing I wanted to... Sorry, go ahead. We can circle back to that.
The word "one" is in it.
The word "want." Interesting.
One. O-N-E.
Oh, one.
Yeah.
O-N-E. Now, something we talked about on the last interview that I think is connected to all this, right, is you've talked a lot about public safety and, the need for enhancing public safety, and that's one of the things that you're running on. It's something that you've been very vocal about, as mayor of El Cajon. And can you sort of talk about the connection between the need to enhance public safety and issues related to the border, related to immigration, sort of what concerns you about those policies?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of public safety issues connected to the border, and I think most of it has to do just with the unknowns.
The name of the app is CBP1.
Yeah, that's it.
CBP1. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danielle.
I'm sorry, where was I?
Oh, you're just talking about like the issues connected to the border.
Yeah. You know, so a lot of it is the unknowns of immigration. The current administration is doing zero, or maybe very close to zero vetting. I'm being told that most of these people are coming from countries where we have no database. We have no idea what they've been arrested for. We have no idea what their history is. We don't know if they're great members of society that are going to make our society a much better place, or if they're murderers, rapists, gang members, you know. And when you're talking about, like I said, 8 million people that have come across since the Biden administration took over, it just stands to reason that the number of people that are going to come in that are very dangerous people is going to be more than zero. And it's probably going to be, I mean, even if it was 10%, that would be a tremendous number of dangerous people coming into our society and kind of just, we don't know where they're going to be. We don't know what they're doing. We don't have a record of them. And we're not going to really know until they start really getting involved in heinous crimes. So as the mayor of a city, you know, my big concern is always public safety. That's my biggest job, is to make sure that people are safe. And whenever you throw an unknown factor like that in, it doesn't make my life any better. There's no positive effect of bringing more people into the country from my perspective. Now, there could be. There has been in American history, there have been times when we were, like in the Irish immigration wave, that we needed people to come and work. And that's why they brought the Irish in. They brought the Chinese in when they need people to build railroads, and so there was a benefit. There was a trade-off there. We, in the last 50 years or so, we've brought in a lot of people that had skills that we really needed: computer science skills, medical skills, entrepreneurial skills, you know, from other countries. But we seem to have moved away from that. We've moved into this. In fact, it's a dichotomy there, because now if you're going to apply from India, say you're an anesthesiologist and you want to come from India, it's very difficult to get into America. Whereas if you just came in through the Darien Pass and walked across the border, then there'd be no problem whatsoever.
So you think the incentive structure is off?
Well, I think, I certainly do think that. But I think the problem is that we're really, from a sociological point of view, we are no longer concerned about making America a better place. We are concerned about opening our doors to anybody who wants to come in.
Okay.
And I think that's the wrong way to look at it if your job is to protect Americans. So my job is to protect people from El Cajon, which are Americans. And so when you're telling me that you're going to bring in, I mean, in San Diego County, we've, I think something like 17,000 people have been dropped off in the past few weeks. And
That's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And, you know, a lot of those people are coming into my town because we're one of 3 drop-off stations.
Sure. Good.
So from a public safety point of view, it just means more criminals on the streets. I'm not saying that they're all criminals, but some of them are. And it's more dangerous people that will probably hurt the people that live in my town.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was thinking about was, and we'd have to fact check this too, but I thought I remember, reading one report that came out recently, because there was when Trump made the comments back in, I think, 2016 about, they're bringing, rapists, murderers, drugs across our border. There was actually a fact check done on that statement that showed that actually it's interesting, is undocumented immigrants, according to this report, commit on average less crimes than, the average American. The thing is that a lot of these, I think the pushback to what you're saying from some people would be that, a lot of these immigrants coming in, especially from the Central and South American countries, do tend to fill, lower skilled jobs that, other people might not want to work. And so that they're sort of adding some productivity to our economy, adding productivity to our society, like bringing a benefit from their country, bringing new skill sets into our country. So what would sort of your rejoinder to this be in terms of this idea that, I guess somebody on the Democratic side would say that, immigrants bring, on the whole, more value than
the cost?
Yeah, than cost to the country. Like, what would sort of your pushback be in sort of the vein that you would take?
Well, number one, I don't believe that. I have come to the place in my life where, especially after COVID, where I think statistical analysis of things can be massaged and cherry picked to say anything you want to say. So I have very low expectations for the veracity of statistical analysis. Having said that, I understand that there are people that want non-skilled people to come into and fill those jobs. I kind of will ask the question, why? Why do Americans not want to work? See, I come from a different frame of reference. Sure. I've worked every kind of non-skilled job you could work when I was
everything
when I was young. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I'm not all that unique. Most of my friends, we picked up construction jobs. We worked at restaurants. We waited tables. We tended bar. We worked in clothing stores. We did whatever we could to get through college and get to the next step. And always with the expectation that this was not a job that we were going to have for the rest of our lives. That we were going to use this job to catapult ourselves to the next level, sure, so that eventually we would be CEOs and business owners and managers and
congressmen.
And that's pretty much how it worked out, I think, for most people. Yeah. And somewhere along the line, and I can't say that I completely understand it, but somewhere along the line, America's young people decided they didn't want to work. And I find that perplexing.
Did you think that was like amplified during COVID?
I think the government did a horrible disservice to the nation by getting people used to the concept that there was a way to survive without working. I kind of come from the mantra of you don't work, you don't eat. And that was actually really true in my case.
Sure.
But the government said, nah, if you don't want to work.
The illegal immigrant criminal conviction rate was 782 per 100,000 illegal immigrants versus 1,422 per 100,000 native-born Americans.
With legal?
Yeah, with like American.
Okay, so legal Americans commit crimes at a higher rate than undocumented? Okay, interesting. Sorry for the interruption, but I just...
Well, my answer to that is 100% of the people that are coming in from other countries that you don't let in commit zero crimes in America. First off, I don't believe the statistic. I'd want to read the study about that. I find that very difficult to believe. But
well, it's interesting.
Even if it was true, though, it still doesn't. It doesn't mean like if you smoke this brand of cigarette, you'll get cancer at a much higher rate than this brand of cigarette. So let's just go ahead and say it's good to smoke the other brand. Sure. I still don't think it's adding much to American society, and I disagree with the concept that we have to import people into work. Yeah. But having said that, I want to be clear. I'm not against legal immigration. I'm not against a controlled and reasonable immigration process.
You think the current immigration system is failing us, though, as American citizens?
There is no immigration policy. It is a wide open border.
And you put the blame for that solely on the Democrats, or is this sort of a long-standing like national issue that goes beyond just the Biden administration? Hey, Stay Classy listeners, Steve here, and we have a new friend of the show I can't wait to share with you. None other than Legendary Group, San Diego's premier nightlife company that specializes in making your nights unforgettable. If you haven't heard already, they are the go-to source for connecting you to the best events in the city and handling all of your VIP needs. To access the very best of San Diego, visit www.legendarygroup.com. That's www.lgndrygroup.com for more information.
It is a longstanding national issue. There's been a lot of confusion amongst both parties on how to deal with this issue because it is a tricky issue, and people that are running for office are oftentimes trying to court various groups that they think will help them get elected. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, the conventional wisdom was you don't want to go against any kind of immigration. You don't want to say anything about immigration because it's going to offend the
certain communities,
the Mexican community, the Hispanic community that is growing. But the interesting thing is, if you look at the logic, the number one group of people that are converting over to Republican voting are Hispanics. The number one group of people that are against unfettered immigration are Hispanics. So it's really educated white liberals who are mostly excited about open borders. And I have always had a philosophical divide between that group and myself.
Now, I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about the campaign itself. So your opponent, Sarah Jacobs, has been the incumbent since 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
2018. So she's done...
No, 20.
20.
No, 18. I'm sorry.
2018. So she's won 3 elections so far. She's also, correct me if I'm wrong.
She won 2 elections.
She's won 2 elections. So is she the youngest member of Congress, or is she the youngest Democrat member of Congress? I can't remember, but something like that.
I thought she was the youngest member.
She's the youngest? Okay, she's only 34. So I'm curious to know like how your campaign's going and sort of how you are sort of, as far as messaging goes, sizing yourself up against Sarah Jacobs, sort of sizing yourself up and putting out messaging to voters to compare yourself to sort of the existing member.
Well, at this point in the campaign, we're not really getting into much messaging, in a compare and contrast kind of way. I am spending a lot of time getting myself in front of people and kind of telling them about what I think and who I am and what my history is. But at some point later in the campaign, there will be this dichotomy, a compare and contrast between me and her. But my messaging is pretty simple. I think I'm talking to people about what really matters to them. If you look at Sarah Jacobs, she's fairly focused on 2 issues, and that's transgenderism and abortion.
Yeah.
And those are very emotional issues.
Sure.
And they're oftentimes used as a wedge issue to say, it doesn't matter what this guy's resume is. It doesn't matter what he's done. It doesn't matter even if you like him. He's not on the same page as we are as abortion.
You can write him off on an identity basis.
Yeah, it's just he's not acceptable because he doesn't believe in abortion up until a month after birth. And so I'm really not planning on letting myself get involved in that conversation because, number one, abortion is a states' rights issue and it's not a federal issue. And California has written abortion access into the Constitution. You can have abortions up until the day of birth. There is even some people trying to get abortion legal up until a month after birth in California.
I don't like that.
Well, who does? It's infanticide. But it just shows you the kind of how this has really turned into a religion.
Yeah.
Complete with, I don't know, vestiges. You just, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that's really the issue that most people are really worried about. I think people are worried about getting out of their car and stepping over a few rows of homeless people trying to get to the CVS. I think people are worried about their teenage and college-age kids dying of fentanyl overdoses. I think they're worried about human trafficking of kids. I think they're worried about the cost of electricity and the cost of gasoline and the cost of the grocery store and the cost of rent. And they're worried about public safety. And those are the differences I'm going to point out. I mean, for example, she recently, there was a resolution that says that Congress would not support any attempt to defund the police. And she did not sign that because she wants to be, I'm not sure what her reasons reason. I can assume that her reason is she's okay with the idea of defunding the police. And so I think that's a big difference. I think that's a tangible difference.
A red flag to voters for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's going to make it about abortion because that
emotionally charged.
That emotionally charges people. But in the end, it wouldn't matter if I got elected or anybody got elected. You can't change the abortion. I couldn't change. If I devoted my life to changing it, I couldn't change it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to speak to people rationally and say, let's talk about things that
we can change.
That
right.
you can change, and it really affect your day-to-day living. You're being afraid to let your high school senior go to a party because he might die of fentanyl. That's a real issue.
Yeah.
And we can control that very quickly by having regulations on the border and being a lot tougher on these cartels.
It's interesting. Did you hear recently that actually I think it was the Sinaloa cartel, it's the biggest one in Mexico, actually announced that they're going to start punishing dealers who sell fentanyl with death. So even the cartel is sort of recognizing that,
it's a bad business model.
It's a bad business model for them. I just found that interesting. Yeah, get some more on. But I just found that interesting. But what I was going to ask you is, like, do you sort of anticipate, and I know we're still a ways out, 13 months or so from the election day, but do you sort of anticipate her, Sarah Jacobs, that is, sort of weaponizing those identity issues against you on the campaign trail?
I pretty much guarantee it.
Yeah. Do you, how do you sort of respond to that? And in addition to that, like, she is, a very young candidate or a very young incumbent, and she might have that more easy appeal to younger voters, to millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Zers. So sort of how do you sort of plan to push back against that and sort of capture that segment of the vote that's going to be needed to swing things your way?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things I have to do is get in front of people.
Yeah.
I find that people kind of have a one-dimensional idea of what any candidate is like, or what any mayor is like. They have a caricature of who they think that person is. And I find that if I can sit with people and talk to them, I generally win them over, because I try to be a very reasonable, compassionate, caring person. And I think when you can kind of get past those knee-jerk reactions of those prejudices and really talk to people, I think it's going to be a lot different situation. But again, I don't think young people are so one-dimensional and so stupid as to believe that they can be manipulated so easily. I have kids that are all, post-college, young 20s, and they're all worried about these huge issues about quality of life. They're worried about safety. They're worried about cost. They're worried about, can they stay in California? Do they have to leave? And they want to stay here so where their home is. And there's a lot we can do about that. There's some things we can't. The cost of real estate, that's not something the government can do much about. But we can certainly change the cost of energy. We can change the cost of gasoline.
Sure.
We can not go to war on things like natural gas, and which I think natural gas is a great alternative. But
sure. What do you think about nuclear, by the way?
I think nuclear is the answer.
The answer.
The problem.
A lot of experts would agree with you on that one.
Well, it makes me really feel like the people that are climate change activists are not very genuine in their belief system, because they say what they're really worried about is carbon. And then you go and talk to them and say, you know what? Let's not talk about nuclear first. Let's talk about natural gas first.
Sure,
Get the nuclear.
Yeah.
So if I say, well, wait a second, let's use natural gas, 99% clean. We could export that to the countries that are really causing the carbon problems. The people that are poverty is the number one predictor of somebody generating more carbon, because when you're in poverty, you're going to be burning coal, you're going to be burning wood, you're going to be burning dung, and the best way to get people to care about the environment and to have the capacity to care about the environment and to make changes in their lifestyle that will be environmentally protective is to bring them out of poverty and give them a standard of living so that they're not constantly worried about surviving, and they have a little bit more bandwidth to think about these greater issues. So if we wanted to do that, we could export natural gas to these impoverished third world countries, raise their standard of living, a lot less people would die because more people die from the cold than from the heat, and do a lot for our national debt in the meantime, and reduce carbon by a significant amount because they wouldn't be burning these other fuels. And you bring that up to a climate activist who says, no, it's not 100% clean. Mm-hmm. We only accept 100%. It's like, and I feel the same way about abortion. I mean, it's like people on my side oftentimes say, no, the only thing we'll accept is a complete end to abortion. I was like, well, wouldn't it be better to compromise and have less abortions? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be better to compromise and clean up the environment a lot, but even though it wasn't going to be 100% perfect?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. Now, the real way to get 100% perfect is to have nuclear energy, and not the Chernobyl nuclear energy, but the nuclear energy is happening today.
The kind that works in France, for instance.
Yeah.
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 Other countries.
Yeah. France is doing the right thing. And renewables are never going to solve our problem. The clouds come and it's night sometimes, and the wind doesn't blow sometimes. And every country in Europe that's tried to go to this complete renewable way of doing it has had to rely on coal plants because they can't take care of their people if they don't do that. Anyway, I'm all over the place.
No, that's okay.
But I don't believe that nuclear energy is the danger that it used to be. I just met with Lyndon Blue of General Atomics. He talked to me about a hydrogen-based nuclear reactor that's about the size of a small car that could be encased in concrete deep in the ground in the middle of the desert, and doesn't get any water from the outside, so there's no contamination.
There's a lot of innovation happening when you do the research. There was the first successful fusion reaction actually recently.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in the last few months. This is something that for decades, people said it's never going to happen. You're never going to create the conditions for a successful controlled fusion reaction to occur. And I think it was Livermore Laboratory up in Northern California that actually successfully tested a fusion reaction. I think it was in. It's sometime really. I think it was March or April.
When I talked to Lyndon Blue at General Atomics, he told me the same thing that they were working on a fusion reaction, and they felt that it was within their grasp.
Yeah, which I think it was revolutionary. Kind of got very little coverage, but I wanted to touch though more on cost of living because I think that's something that's going to be huge in the campaign for you. Is basically for people who are wondering how does your campaign for the 51st, how does that sort of assuming if you win the seat, the policies and ideas that you'll be advocating for that will tangibly lower the cost of living, lower the cost of gas, lower the cost of housing for people living in California, how would you sort of carry that topic?
Well, there's a lot of things to do, and a lot of this is based upon California politics, so you can't completely change them by going to Washington. But I think in general, politically, the answer is that you're going to have to start putting Americans first and quality of life above some of these loftier cerebral ideas. Energy is a big thing. Having a clean, efficient, reliable source of energy that is not expensive would go a long way to making people's quality of life. Because it's not just your electricity in your house or your car; it's the way that food comes to the store. The way that goods come to your neighborhood or through the Amazon. Everything. Energy touches the cost of everything, and everything becomes more and more expensive when you start committing or embracing these suicidal, common sense policies that are narrowly defined to achieve a specific goal. But really, when people say, well, but that would be so expensive, be so detrimental to people, the answer is, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter. There's no cost that is too great to achieve this goal.
You're talking about the climate change goals.
That's a good example.
Okay.
But we could apply that to many other things. But there are things that can be done from a Washington perspective to clean up a lot of problems. Like, for example, people will say, well, you've been really involved in the homeless issue. That's been your like signature issue.
Yeah, you've been big on that.
And, but if you go to Washington, then you no longer have any input on that. And I say, oh, exactly wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
California is acting in a vacuum, and they're creating all these social experiments around homelessness and climate change and everything else. Is very, very tough on the people that live here, but there's not much they can do about it. And we, as a nation, enable that because we give California massive amounts of money for housing, for transportation, for health, for welfare, for all these things that come in from the federal government. If the United States Congress said, look, you're going to have to meet some basic standards. You can't, you're going to have to arrest and convict criminals that actually commit crimes. You're going to have to provide prisons for people. You're going to have to not allow encampments on your streets and not be able to ensure basic health and human safety. If you don't do those things, we're not going to give you any money. You do what you want. You want to commit suicide, go ahead, but we're not going to participate. And you cut off their money. And believe me, California would change or fail so fast.
I'm thinking of the analogy of parents sort of cutting off their kid who's partying in college and not studying. Is that sort of is that California's relationship to the federal government right now?
That's a great analogy. Yeah. It's like, you want to be a party animal, go ahead, but not on my time.
Yeah, not on your time. So one thing I wanted to ask you is you've been mayor now for since 2014. And you're running for Congress now. But as far as initially, and I said this at the beginning, so I want to make sure we circle back to this while we still have time.
Sure.
Is, the original reasons that drove you to pursue public office and the motivations there. Like I can tell just from 2 conversations with you, and I know we haven't known each other that much, but you're very passionate about public office. You're very passionate about public service. You care a lot about your constituents, and you're determined to do whatever it takes to make sure that the people around you succeed. So what I want to know is like sort of what got you to that place in life where you were like, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be. Like where did it all start?
Well, honestly, a lot of that grew over time. I wasn't so passionate when I first entered into that. In fact, I entered it kind of timidly and tepidly.
Yeah.
I saw what was happening in America. I saw the warning signs of a lot of things that are happening today, and I was worried about it. I wanted to get involved. So I lived in El Cajon. I went and talked to somebody who was involved in politics, and I said, I'd like to get involved and maybe help on somebody's campaign or have a fundraiser at my house or something.
Sure.
And they said, you should run for office. And I said, oh, no. That's
not what I meant.
That's not me.
Yeah.
I've got a very busy life. But eventually I warmed up to the idea. I'd spent 4 years on the planning commission, which is a non-paid, non-elected position, but it's an important job and it kind of the minor leagues for city council. Mm. And I think it was over that period of 4 years that I realized how much good could be done. And I think I was under the impression, like a lot of Americans are, that the only thing that really matters is who's in Washington. Those are the big, who's the governor, who's the president. Those are the things that really matter. But if you want to talk about effects on your life,
day to day, yeah,
your city council, your mayor, your school board, those have more effects on your day to day life than you could possibly imagine. And I think being on the planning commission taught me that, and it kind of opened my eyes to how much good I could do if I were to get involved. So I ran for city council.
Yeah. And then from there, at some point down the line, you thought, I'm doing my job as mayor. You've done a lot in your time, but you thought maybe there's something more I can do on a bigger level, on a more, so I would say global level.
Not really. That's the normal thing that political people do. So political people are like anybody else. They think about their career, they think about their job, they think about their status, they think about what's next. That's what all people do. And frankly, at my place in my life right now, giving up a couple of years to run in a very tough race against an incumbent probably something I would not have done if it was just based on what was best for me. But during COVID, I started really studying. I get like focused on certain topics and I'll exhaust myself on some topic and then I'll go on to the next one. But I was, during COVID, I really studied totalitarianism, as you can imagine why.
Yeah.
The psychology of it, the history of it. And I came to the conclusion that America is in the throes of becoming a soft totalitarian nation.
Wow.
And that we're not 50 years away from it. It's not, a generation or two away. It is like in the next election cycle or two.
I wish we had a whole podcast just talk about this because this is fascinating what you're saying.
And so once I came to that conclusion, it changed the way I thought about it. And I realized that I had been so blessed in my life with a great wife, great kids, great grandkids, beautiful home, a nice career, that if I didn't stand up and fight right now, then I should be ashamed of myself.
You'd regret it.
Well, I think it's my obligation. I probably am the only person in that area that can take Sarah Jacobs out. And I think she's a dangerous person in society. She may be very nice, and I'm not saying she's a horrible person, but I think her ideas are incredibly dangerous.
As a politician, yeah, not as a person.
Well, as a human being.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't even know her. I don't have any opinion of who she is. But I know that she aligns herself with the squad. I know that she's ultra radical. And I'm against ultra radicalism on the left or the right, by the way. And, I think that pragmatism is a much better way in which to be a servant to all the people. So I don't think she serves all the people. I think she serves a very narrow left-wing agenda from a billionaire's perspective, somebody who's never had a job, who doesn't live in the district, who doesn't know the people. I know these people. I live with these people. I coach soccer in Little League with these people. I go to the churches that these people go to. I go to the restaurants they go to. I am one of these people, and I think I'm better suited to be their servant than she is. And I think it's so important that I felt like it was my obligation. So, when I talked to my wife about it in those terms, she said, well, what do you have to do? I said, well, we have to give up 2 years of our life and do nothing else but run for Congress. And she said, let's do it. So we're doing it together. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's the relationship goal that I want in my life, to have somebody who's going to back you up like that, because it's not just you, it's a team effort, right? And it's the people around you. Couldn't
do it by myself.
Yeah, no way. No, I don't think anybody can. But the last question I want to leave you with before we go, as we wrap up, is just, this is something I ask.
I feel like this went by in like 10 minutes.
I know. And there were so many things too where we could have done a separate episode just on what you said about totalitarianism. I would, maybe we'll bring you on a third time.
Happy to talk about it.
But the last thing I just want to ask you is something I ask, we have retired NFL players, we have all sorts of people who come on here, and I always ask this question, which is, for successful people like yourself, who have made it to this point in life, just sort of advice for people listening to this who are wondering, how does, I know you're mayor, you're running for Congress, like how do you do what you do? Like how is it that you stay grounded, that you stay focused, that you stay disciplined on a day-to-day basis? Like what is sort of the parting message you can leave with people in terms of like how you found what made you successful to the point where you are today?
Well, I'll give you a Jordan Peterson kind of example because I listen to him a lot, and I think we have the same philosophy of life. Number one, you got to overcome your fears. The main reason people don't do big things is because they're afraid. How many times have you been at a party or with somebody who said, "I've got a great idea for a product"? You say, "Wow, that would be great. You should do that." You say, "Oh yeah, man, I should." And of course, they don't, because once they start thinking about the logistics of it, they just say, "Oh, it's too big. It's for somebody else. I'm not smart enough." And I had to really overcome that in my life. And when I had big ideas and big thoughts, I had to overcome my natural tendency to discount myself and to be fearful and to just do it. So that's the number one thing. And then the second part is that you have to be narcissistic. But you have to control that narcissism. Yeah. I think modern philosophy tells us that narcissism is a bad thing. And out of control narcissism is a bad thing. But you cannot be a successful human being if you don't have some narcissistic tendencies. Meaning, at some point you have to say, you know what, I'm the best person for that job.
Well, a certain level of self-belief.
Yeah. I'm the smartest guy to do that thing. You know, I can do this. And to go ahead and attack the world from that way. But for me, I have to have mitigating factors in that. And those mitigating factors are relationship with my wife, like I said, having kids, caring for community, getting involved in community, having church and God in my life. And you know, that's a big mitigating factor, because if you want to, you know, religion is great for if you want to be selfish and you want to be somebody that hurts other people, you adopt this philosophy that says, no, a good person doesn't do that. A good person sublimates their needs for the needs of others, and they act as a servant as opposed to a dictator.
Yeah.
And so those are the two things I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I could go on for another hour, 2 hours with you.
Yeah,
but,
me too. It sounds like it's fun.
We'll do this again. And last thing is, for people who want to find out more about you, do you have a campaign website or something?
Yeah, you can call go to wellsforcongress2024.com.
All right. And yeah, there you can find out more about the candidates and the issues as well. But
I also ask that people look for Bill Wells Mayor on Instagram. A lot of my content is coming out on that.
Yeah, I see you active on Instagram. I see you active on Twitter. So be sure and follow the mayor on social media. But thanks so much again, Bill, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. This has been one of the most fun I've had in a long time.
I'm sure we'll do a part 3.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that's a wrap. This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks again to our sponsor, MaxLux Media at maxluxmedia.com. Check us out at stayclassysdpod.com or any of our social media outlets. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere else you get your podcast content. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue bringing you important content that you're not going to see anywhere else. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the show. See you next time. Stay classy, San Diego.